Hello and welcome to this reflection on this university project. So this was a project done for my second year as a group project with 5 people over the course of, I think it was about 8 to 10 weeks. And basically the project was in Unreal and we were given sort of free rein to make something as long as it showed off our programming skills and our development skills, and we use design patterns and things of that nature. And I'm basically going to go through the things that I did in it and reflect on them. That's basically the purpose for all this, is a video reflection on these things and showing off this game with commentary over the top of it. So first things first, if you hear any crackling from the music, that is actually in the game for some reason. I didn't add the music in. I have no idea why it's in there. It might be the way it's mastered or the way it's put into the actual thing. No idea why. The rest of the options in here work perfectly fine. The rest of these options are perfectly fine. Even the rebinding keys works alright. You can only rebind them to the keyboard, but they do work perfectly fine. You wouldn't want them on the mouse anyway, to be fair. But yes, everything else works. We're going to go to tutorial because I did do some things on the tutorial. So, for example, that tutorial box over there is a thing that I actually did do on the tutorial. This thing here, it says time to explore. That was a thing that I did in there, mainly because one of the people that did the rest of the UI wasn't able to put as much time in as they'd like, and I added that in just to make it feel a little less like a prototype game. That was one thing I added in. It's not a huge thing. I added them in pretty much anywhere, so it's just a thing you customize inside of blueprints with what you actually want. Also added in almost all of the sounds, so pretty much all of the sounds other than music. These things here, these levers, these spikes, or what we call puzzle elements. The ability to have checkpoints and death, that's all me. The death and the checkpoints are completely separate in tutorial to the main game. And that's because these here are treated as levels in Unreal, and the main game is everything's an actor. But we'll see. I'll explain that in a second. So this here is another puzzle element over here. It's a ground blade, and if you touch that, you'll die. And the idea is these little tutorial levels, which I designed this tutorial bit basically. These bits on the end are what I designed. They're just sort of designed to teach you the ways of things. And then you could eat some food over here, which I added these little sounds on. The sounds are all sort of picked out of a random pool of things. So they're all my creation as well. I'll go through the elements a little more when I go through the actual main thing. This is another one of my rooms over here. I do like how I actually made the rooms. They're not difficult puzzles, but they are actual puzzles in of themselves a little bit. So, for example, this over here, you can't push this block out of this here, out of these gates over here. You have to actually push this block here onto this button, and then you can push this block out of here. And obviously you can't push it through these. This here is like an indicator of the edge of where you can't push this block anymore. With these movable blocks, there's either 2 ways you can do it. You can either have like an edge, like this block, this sort of wooden thing here is one of the edges you can stick in. Well, you can stick it whatever you want because it's just a tag, but that's what I've used as like a visual indicator. Or you can have like a track, and you can say the blocks can only go on this track. So those 2 buttons have been pressed, and that's what these here are green for, and that's the end of the tutorial. So that there is built as a level, but these here now, all of the rooms are built as actors, so we need a completely different checkpointing system for death for these, because this here now is random. So I do not know what I'm going to be seeing through this room until I get close to it. I think this is one of my rooms. This is not. This is one of Jamie's rooms, which is the other person that designed the other rooms, basically. But this is using some of my elements. So these spikes can also be timed, like these are here. So this also, I guess, shows off the puzzle elements that I created as well. So you don't have to use levers for the puzzle elements. You can also use just timed spikes and make your own puzzle out of them. So he chose to go that route instead, and you can choose the timings on all the spikes with just numbers. You could say, I want the warning to be then, this many seconds before it actually comes up. It's not that, it's next time. You can choose when the warning happens, which is that when that little bit comes up, which is that little warning there. You can say that happens. I think by default it happens every 2 seconds before. But you can choose that. That's just a thing you could choose, and then you could choose when when the cycle happens. Every 4 seconds, every 6 seconds, or whatever. And he made a puzzle out of that. That's just a valid thing that you can do. And the doors are locked when you went through this without dying. I think it's in the center of this here, so you couldn't somehow jump through this. I think this room also has a hidden chest. Here. Yes, it does. Right here is a hidden chest. Also added the sounds for even that stuff, I think, as well, which are all little randomized sounds amongst themselves just to make it a little less monotonous. The spikes also pause when you're not in them, because there can be a lot of timers. So if you get a lot of spikes in your world, we realised it lagged a hell of a lot, especially with this room, which is my spike room. There can be a hell of a lot of timers running, because this isn't on tick. This is all just with timers running individually. The ones on the outside are marked as not moving, so they will never run. They'll never make a timer. So that does actually, performance-wise, that does actually lower the performance. Raise the performance, I suppose, because they'll never set a time whatsoever. But the ones in here will only run their timers when you enter the room, and they'll pause when you leave. So I guess in the very beginning, there's a very slight amount of performance hit, but you can't tell that because it's in that loading screen, which is fine. Slightly longer loading screen for not lagging when you go through the actual game. Now, one thing I do regret is having squared a cap on the amount of spikes. I don't know how I would go about doing it. Maybe I would do it with, a sphere around the player. I thought I was going to die there. Yeah, I was kind of shooting above my weight there, trying to get all the way to the beginning. Some kind of cap, maybe around the player, saying, okay, this many spikes are allowed to actually make sound around me or something. Probably would be a better way of doing it, because they can get really loud. But I'm just going to continue this one. I'm quite happy with it, honestly, other than the sound now that you're currently hearing. I made the puzzles. I mean, they're not that difficult, but they are pretty tricky, and we'll get to one of the puzzles eventually that are really tricky. And actually, we're tricky for one of the other people. So actually, we're sort of bug testing the actual game. Oh god, that was a loud one then. Also, the sound comes through where the camera is, not where the player is, which is why you heard that really loud then. Again, that should have been something I would have done if I had more time to do it. Unfortunately, the person that we were going to have on sound didn't quite have enough time to put any time into sound, so I just had to stick some more time in myself into sound whilst also doing the rest of the stuff. Unfortunately, that was the case in that one. I'm still pretty happy with the fact that we got so much sound in there. Probably my only regret with that there is that where there isn't sound is actually quite glaring, if you know what I mean. So this here is another one of my rooms. So all the stuff here, other than the visuals, is designed by me. Oh, and I know what room's over there now because those elements don't pause. Now, one thing I didn't design was the way the player moves. Now, one thing here is I've tried my best to stop people skipping forward in this puzzle, but you can 100% skip forward in this puzzle if you just do this. You can just about skip forward there. I mean, you'll die there unless you did this, I suppose, and then got on that platform. But you can 100% skip that puzzle a little bit there. I'm not sure if you can skip it here, actually. I don't think you can. No. That might be a bit too far there. But you can actually skip the puzzle a little bit, which is a legitimate thing. But yeah, this is my puzzle as well over here, and these are all my elements, so the levers and the platforms. So the platforms, you can have them either turn back and forth, which is what these do over here, or you can just have them rotate sort of clockwise, so they just add and they go round. These here rotate back and forth because it made it easier to design the puzzle itself, but the option's in there. And the levers what they'll do is if they're being triggered by a lever, they'll just match the state visually. That's what you're seeing there, with the levers matching visually there. So I'm just going to continue this one on. I'm going to go fairly in order, other than the one that I just skipped, just to show you that. Unfortunately, the character controller is a little bit more floaty than I'd like. So I'm going to go down here, and I'm definitely going to go down because I can hear the next room. So you know how I said the spikes pause? Something else doesn't pause that's making a lot of noise in that next room down there. So there's a platform room. I'm pretty happy with that, honestly, other than the character controller being a little bit too floaty. I might control a little bit, though. It wasn't me that designed it. This room over here was called Quick Death, I think. This room over here utilises those moving blades. Now, the moving blades are in two parts. So there's the track, which is sort of a time track element, and then the damage components. So, technically speaking, this axe and that moving blade thing moving back and forth in the back there, and the actual ground blade, they're all the same component in code, and then you customize them in Blueprint to do whatever they're doing. So it's a timeline for the axe and the moving swinging blade thing, and then the ground blade is whatever. I think it might be a timeline, just rotates, I think. And then the track is its own thing, so you could customize them to do whatever. So the axe is pretty random. It just sort of rotates and then moves about. The fact that it's pretty random, apparently according to my testers, says it made it harder to predict. But either way, so here you're seeing that if blades actually hit one another, they will actually move away, sort of they clank off each other, as it were. That's what's happening there. And this here is the swinging one over here, which is pretty much the only speed that actually was difficult. The other speeds were actually quite easy, mainly because when they swung on the edge, it was like, okay, well, now I know when to go. This speed was pretty much the only speed that was difficult. So the idea here is you might just get to the end and press that lever, and then you can just come out here. So then you've got these here. So on the ground blades, there was a little tick box. So if they move really fast, you can add a whoosh sound to them. So these two here have a whoosh sound, but this first one over here doesn't. It's just got its normal sound. So ground blades also can interact with blocks, as you can see there. If they hit you, you'll die. Obviously, we already know that already. And everything happens. Everything, pretty much happens the way you would expect them to happen. I'm doing a little trick there where if you just jump, it's like ridiculously easy to get around that. Get to the center over here, and the room's unlocked. I'm going to go down because I reckon that's probably the best option here, apart from for the sound purposes. Yeah. I'm fairly happy with those, other than maybe making them a little more, like with the physics, maybe a little more viable, maybe. So this here is probably one of the most complicated puzzles in the whole thing, I would say. So the idea is, I'm doing this in order here, so that one there lifted up this gate over here, and the idea is you're supposed to be able to get to that lever right there. And you're supposed to be able to get a block onto the output over there. Oh, I did that in a way that I shouldn't have been able to do that, actually, there. Well, that there's a glitch, I suppose. I somehow mushed myself right up against that one, then. Never said it was perfect. You're supposed to actually move that block away there, but somehow I was able to mush that away. Oh well, that did not happen in testing, I can tell you that much. But yeah, this one is probably one of the more tricky puzzles here. So basically all you've got to do is move the blocks until they reach the end. The end little bits. So there's 4 little buttons on the end here that all lift these things on the end. And you do that just by sticking your blocks onto the buttons in the center. And this one over here is the one that trips up most people because it's the harder one. So let's move this one first. So this track over here is the other way of blocking people. So you can't move things off of this track here. So if I push this in ways that don't mess around with this track, you can't move them. That's the way that goes, essentially. So this is the other way of doing it. One thing I did over there, by the way, was I did actually, up here, when I mushed this one forward, is you can reset these, because you can technically, it's difficult on some of them, you can technically block yourself out. No pun intended. You can block yourself out of the puzzles. So in order to stop that from ever happening, you just press that lever and it resets, which was a pretty easy thing to do because the blocks themselves are just moving in relative space. So all I do is I reset the relative space to the default position. It wouldn't work if these are moving beyond this room. Like if they're moving really far out, it wouldn't really work very well. That should be all of them. It is. Some treasure here. And that unlocks the room. And then there's one more room, I believe. Is there one more room? Platforming, blocks, quick death. That might be all the rooms, actually. Platforming, quick death, spikes. I think that's all the rooms, actually. Yeah, I think that's actually all the rooms for me, actually. Which is actually really good that I somehow managed to get every single room done really quickly. Something that I did actually add in towards the end, though, here, was this. The Konami code, which I didn't have to use this time whatsoever in this entire thing. Something that I really wanted to do, or should have done really, is to add a little more sound in places, I reckon. This is just reflection now, as I'm just wondering about now. Is add a little more sound in places. Make more elements that had sound on them pause. It only became apparent when I was actually wandering about with sound, because they don't affect the performance. Only the spikes really affected performance when they didn't pause. So only when, for example, the quick death elements, for example, only when they had sound on them. Oh god, okay, that's why instead. Only when I added sound to them did that actually negatively affect me. Okay, so I found the room I was after, which is this room over here, which is the end room. Now, this also highlights something else with my puzzle rooms, which you might have noticed. Some of them are a bit bare, and this room I think is a little bit bare as well. I would have liked a little more loop to the actual space, but I mean, all in all, I'm pretty happy with the way this game looks. It's probably the best looking thing in my portfolios thus far. But this game is endless, so I just jumped through the end thing, and this game just continues to respawn things forever, as you can see, and it just goes on, and the health carries forward, and so do the coins, even though this is a new level technically. It doesn't end. There's not even a high scoreboard, which we would like to add in, but we sort of ran out of time when trying to do other things. But yeah, this is, I believe that's everything I need to show you. This is this project, which I guess I'm going to be calling Jones, because I'm not saying the entire name of the entire thing. If you would like to see my portfolio, that link is in the description. And on there will probably be a written version of a reflection if you'd rather read things, but you've pretty much listened to a version of the reflection now anyway, so it depends on how you would like to consume things. But on there also is other projects on there, like Unity projects and first principles projects in SDL and other such programs. So I will catch you next time. Thank you very much, and goodbye.